committee meeting for June of 2021. And I want to thank Michael Francoeur, my co-chair, for being here. Thank you. And Lucian Reynolds, our district manager, who's also helping behind the scenes. I change the slide. Then I'm going to need some help. Sorry, my eyes are tearing. We have a relatively short agenda, so we'll move on with it and see how each of them go. Go to the first one. I'm going to need some assistance from Lucian on this one. Cargo bike corral observations. You go to the next slide. Yeah, so we are talking about Warren Street here. If you go to the next, because again, Lucian knows who's coming to speak from Warren Street, but I want to remind people, for those who don't follow the DOT tweets, May has been a really chaotic month of activity out here. And one of them, Commissioner Gutman, announced that cargo bike program is now a permanent program. So while the one on Warren Street started as a temporary one, he has this month made them all permanent. So we're going to be talking a lot about how to organize it and make it better. And as you can see from the information written here, for those who can see it, GPS data has shown that in the month of May, since January, actually there's been over 100% increase in the amount of deliveries done by cargo bike, leading to over 45,000 deliveries. They've also found by studying them that this is way more efficient than using vehicles, such as the vans they were using before at Whole Foods. But it's more than just Whole Foods. Also interesting, a program that I know nothing about, but would like to learn more about, on the 13th of May, spoke about a sustainability program, one of them being the commercial cargo bikes, of which we're talking about now. But two other elements include designated green loading zones, which I have no idea what those are, and a continued expansion of New York's clean truck program in the industrial business zones. So obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes with DOT that we have yet to learn about that have to do with this sustainability aspect. Here to the next slide. Sorry, my eyes are killing me. Yes, I'd like to go to Lucian. You had spoken to some people that live on Warren Street.
Yeah, we actually have a group of neighbors here from Warren Street. I'm so sorry, my child is very talkative today. We have a group of neighbors from Warren Street, and they prepared a presentation of their observations, which I think will be really helpful for DOT. DOT has finished their data collection phase, and I'm so sorry, Nico, please. Okay, he's 8 months old, and he stops for no one.
If you'd let them start with their presentation, I think that's a good place to start.
Yes, so I'll start moving them over. I know we have Jamie Skokorski, who's a property manager for the building. Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on a second.
Benny, well,
so sorry. I'm going to move Jamie over, and then Allison Bowen, I know, is also presenting, and then there's one more person, I believe. Jamie, can you remind me of the third person?
Hi, guys. So we have Allison Bowen and James Schwartz, who are both residents and longtime community members.
Got it. Okay, great. I moved one James S. over. Hopefully it's the right account. And I just want to let everyone know that DOT has no, it's my understanding that DOT has no final designs here. DOT is here to hear from the neighbors, and we're all looking forward to observing this presentation to learn more about now.
Lucian, can I just ask you to correct something? The raised hand sign, I don't see it on the new design. Can you put that?
Sorry, Mitch, I want you to go again. Everyone needs to keep their microphone muted because someone is creating a wicked reverb here. So if you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. Mitch, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you can if you can correct, there's no raised hand sign like I saw on all the other times. So before, just so that before we start for later on, if you can see if you can kind of figure that out. I don't see the raised hand sign.
Uh-huh. Okay. Oh, there's it may look different. At the bottom of the screen, let me just go ahead and let's see if I can. I don't think I can show you my
It
screen right now.
says participants and chat.
So
The smiley
my screen really quick. Right
I'm
here,
sorry.
there's a person. It says reactions. I think if you click on this person here, there's a raise hand button here. So they moved it. WebEx moved it. So that's really good. Thank you, Mitch. For all of our meetings that we use this new version, we're gonna have to kind of do a quick training that it's here under this smiley face reactions button that's here in the bottom row.
So it's to the right of recording?
I don't know what it looks like. I have the administrator version, so it may be slightly
the
different
right
than
of
yours.
share. On the bottom, it says mute, stop video, share, smiley face, 3 dots, and an X. The smiley face, if you hit that, you'll see the
What's its reactions? Oh, so,
Yeah.
okay. They just made it more, all right, no problem.
Well, you guys all get used to it. All right. So with that, I've given the presentation controls to Jamie, and it's coming up. Perfect. All right. It's all yours.
Hi, it's Allison Bowen.
Allison, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt our own thing very briefly. So can we just get clarification? Because Betty, it sounded like you said that this was a permanent installation now, but then everything that I've received from Councilmember Chin's office is that the DOT requested through the end of May to make a decision. And while I'd like to think that they wouldn't make a decision before speaking to us after requesting it, our feedback, I just want to kind of confirm before we go through this.
Sure. Jennifer, no, the program is permanent, so I assume that cargo bikes are here to stay in New York City, but can you tell us specifically for this location, clarify what the deal is?
So from what I know, for this location, we're still evaluating some alternate options right now.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Allison, go ahead.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you, everyone. My name is Allison Bowen. I'm one of the residents at 101 Warren Street. And I'm the mother of 3 small children, 2 of whom attend PS 234.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me?
Allison, it sounds like you're a little bit, it sounds as if you're far away from the microphone. You started out strong, but maybe if you can direct your voice or lean closer to the microphone, that might help.
Let me try this. Is this a little better?
Much better.
Okay, great. I'm the mother of 3 small children, and 2 of them attend PS 234 across the street. We're also members of the Downtown Community Center on the block, and my children participate in the Downtown Soccer League and Downtown Little League, the fields for which are directly across West Street. I'm all for Green New York and cargo bike corrals, but we want to talk today because we don't think that this is the right location for one on Warren Street. I also work in commercial real estate, and I understand the competing priorities in urban planning in the city, but those priorities can never be at the expense of safety, particularly of our children in this community. Children of all ages from all parts of downtown heavily use Warren Street because of PS 234. Those of you who know the school know one of the main entrance egress locations is directly across from the corral. It's where the 4th and 5th graders go in. Also directly across from the corral is the entrance to the school annex at 200 Chambers, where the kindergartners or the 1st graders have their classroom. Also at 200 Chambers is where the community center is, and that's for families mainly with toddlers and preschool age children. They run a preschool there. So there's a lot of kids. It's the thoroughfare for children going to PS 89 from the east and to the main fields for DSL and DLL. And our safety concerns are really threefold. It's the bikes themselves. The bikes are running red lights. They're going in the wrong direction. They're not paying attention to pedestrians. And you guys know what they look like. The velocity and the inertia with which these bikes travel, they have hundreds of pounds of cargo. If a child gets hit, this is not going to be a minor accident. And when they load, secondly, when they load, they're coming out on the sidewalk with these dollies that they're pushing and leaving on the sidewalk with 8 or more boxes, no concern for the pedestrians. And even if they were concerned, once these things get moving, you can't stop them. And third, what I want to mention is the danger. This is like a pile-on danger. It's a danger from the unsafe driving of the cars, trucks, and buses as a result of trying to avoid this corral. So if you've seen the pictures on how the corral is designed, the bikes actually have to be in the one driving lane on the street to be attached and detached to the trailers. So because of that, it's easier for them to load and unload while they're in the driving lane. So they simply park the bikes in the driving lane and do all their loading and unloading. So the cars, the trucks, the buses, I mean, I even saw this on the way home from work today, are swerving into the bike lane and the parking lane on the far side of the street to avoid the bikes, and then swerving back to get into the driving lane again. And if they can't swerve, what they end up doing after they stop and have to wait for this loading is that then they gun it to try and make it through the light at Warren and Greenwich. And what we're really trying to ask, and James is going to speak to this next, is that we can relocate this corral for Whole Foods. We want to avoid one of the children in our community getting hurt or really worse. And I feel like the city seems to be taking a wait and see approach, not willing to do something until a child is injured, which we think is a real possibility. And I urge you to listen to our suggestions and not wait until that happens. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to James.
Hi. Okay, is there a bad reverb, or is that, can you all?
All right, I think, Steve, there's somebody else who's who's unmiked, but try again.
Hi, is it okay now?
It's not. James, I'd recommend checking to see if perchance there's another device that you have in the same area that's also connected.
You come up twice in the list, James. So if you could take one of your devices down, you're getting a feedback from your other device.
Is that better?
No.
No.
Sounds like you're at Woodstock.
Yeah, there's something wrong with my. Let me see if I can log on with my phone. I'm gonna just jump off for 1 sec, or is that better now? No.
Yeah, James, you're gonna have to try. I don't know if you have two devices. I could look at the list, but I saw you come up twice earlier. So if there's another set of speakers that are pushing out sound in where your microphone is for your other device, you're going to get a feedback echo. So if you could sign off from your other device, that would be helpful.
Is this better now? No. Okay.
All right, James, try that again. James, try to unmute and talk again. James, are you still there?
Thank you so much.
Jamie, I don't know what to do about James's audio.
Okay, well, I can step in while he tries to figure out the technical difficulties. And I just shared.
Hi, Jamie. Can you hear?
Very
Is that
good.
better?
Welcome back, James. Yes, much better.
Perfect.
Right. Sorry about that. I'm a resident of Warren Street. I'm also an attorney who specializes in transportation. And I want to just quickly talk about the traffic and then talk about another possibility to the program. Again, as Allison talked about, these bikes don't fit within the cargo space that you guys have granted a permit for. They just don't fit. They can't be loaded in there. So inevitably, they're loaded in the street. Once they're loaded in the street, the bikes need to cross Warren Street, which, as we all know, is full of traffic, buses, pedestrian traffic, people, they have to cross Warren Street to get into the bike lane on Warren Street, which inevitably, it's really just a matter of time before one of them is hit, before someone is hit. So it is definitely foreseeable. It's just to access the bike lane and to be compliant with local rules. The problem is not the bike corral to begin with, because as we all know, Whole Foods is an extremely integral part of our community, and everybody should have access to food. And if they're homebound and so forth of what's going on, these bikes are a great way to deliver food to people with, in whatever means. The problem is where it's located and how it's been designed, especially when we have an alternative means on Murray Street, which is not restrictive at all, but matter of fact, might actually even work better. Murray Street is a 4 or 5 lane street. Warren Street is 1. There is a bike lane now on Murray Street, which if the bike corral were relocated there where the cargo docks are, which would make a lot of sense, those bikes could load up and get right onto the bike lane without having to cross traffic anywhere. And then they could go anywhere to their destination safely in the bike lane. I'm not really sure why. I think Whole Foods may have bitten off more than it could chew by asking for the bike lane, for the bike corral to be installed on Warren Street. It's just not safe. It's not safe for pedestrians. It creates a lot of traffic. You have Bed Bath there. You have Whole Foods. You have cars that are double parked, loading up with groceries. Matter of fact, DOT should know that buses idle, city buses idle along Warren Street, taking up that entire lane that's there. So it almost creates like inevitable, like an accident's going to happen. But that doesn't have to happen because it's a trial program. So what we're suggesting is you try the program now on Murray Street and see how it works and works better. So I'm informed, to the best of my knowledge, that the issue with this might have to do with the fact that some refrigeration equipment was installed on Warren Street. Well, ask yourself what makes sense. Does the burden of having to relocate, because it is a pilot program, and the possibility exists that it won't be approved in this location, therefore Whole Foods would have to do something, is the burden of having to move these units to the back to accommodate the bike corral on Murray Street. How does that weigh out to someone getting hit with a bike on a very, very popular, dense street, Warren Street, as opposed to Murray Street? I know that as an attorney, if I represented someone who was hit, one of these bikers, I wouldn't just sue the company or the insurance company of the driver. I might consider going after New York City for putting this bike corral in a place where it was foreseeable that someone could actually get hit. And from a negligence standpoint, you'd have to really conduct an analysis, but it almost borders on that because it's very, very foreseeable that something's going to happen. And you have another means to accomplish the same goal in a place where there's far less pedestrian traffic and where these bikes can get right into the bike lane that is the cornerstone of so many programs and Vision Zero. I mean, Vision Zero itself, you talk about inevitable accidents and preventing them through engineering, enforcement, and education, because no fatality on city streets is inevitable or acceptable, and this is no exception, especially when it can be placed somewhere else, which would lessen the degree, not to zero, but far, far less than what would happen on Warren Street.
Okay, is anyone else speaking from the residences?
I couldn't hear you, Betty.
Is anyone else planned to be speaking for the residences?
No, we had Allison and James prepare everything on behalf of everyone because we were told we only had 5 minutes. We could certainly go longer, as I'm sure some of the committee members could attest to, but we want to respect everyone's time.
Yeah, no, that's very much appreciated. I think they covered most of the things that I've heard in the past.
Well,
Because
there's one thing I
live a
want to
block
add.
away.
Why doesn't DOT, because we're all people, why don't you guys come down and take a look? Look at the street and look what's there. Come at various different times. Come and check it out. Because I'm sure you would agree, because we all have kids, we're all adults, we all want to be safe. come down and take a look and see what it looks like. See what Warren Street looks like, and then take a look at Murray Street. And common sense would dictate, boy, is that better on Murray Street? You don't need an analysis from Gridlock Sam to tell you that. So I think at that point, it might make a lot of sense. We would welcome you to come down to visit.
Actually, Pat Moore, if you'd like to speak, then Mitch.
Am I on? Yeah, I'm unmuted. I don't know. I'm perplexed. We're having this conversation, but if we have been told that this bike corral is permanent, we've got to approach this in a completely different way. So I'm sorry, did I miss it? I heard at the beginning that it's permanent.
No, the program is permanent, as Jennifer Leung said from the DOT. This particular site may be flexible.
Maybe. We don't know for certain.
Yeah,
So
none of
we
us know.
So we really need to find out, first of all, for certain, whether it can be moved or not.
Well, I have some comments I could make about Murray Street too, but anyway.
I'm not advocating for it to be moved. I'm not saying one way or another, but I'm just saying we're having a conversation that's useless if it's going to be a permanent.
No, it's not. It's not useless because DOT is still evaluating. So this is an important presentation because DOT, who's represented here by Jennifer, needs to hear the essentially the bottom line recommendations and observations by the neighbors on Warren Street. In addition, not only should you take that back, but I think that the request to, see it on site with the neighbors is also, this is a good forum for that recommendation to be made.
If I can just,
when they first proposed the site, many of us had complaints about this site.
am I allowed to say one quick thing before you kick me back to attendees so I can't speak?
Oh, yeah, no, please speak, and then Mitch, you can go after that.
Okay, I'm sorry. One thing that we would like to propose is, the trial period on Warren Street was kind of snuck up on us the day after the CB1 meeting, where, I think there was one conversation, then it showed up. Our request, our humble request is that it continue as a trial period on Murray Street. There's no reason not to evaluate it in an alternate location. Maybe it's better, maybe it's not, but I think it's a reasonable suggestion to trial it in in a different place to see if that might be safer for the community while still being able to service people. I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
I just would suggest to you, because I go down Murray Street all the time. I live in Battery Park City and shop at that Whole Foods. It is all driveways. So you'd have to decide which of the driveways you want to block with a bike corral.
Well, they have a loading zone. They have 2 cargo bays that house their employee parking. So maybe they could make one a bike corral and then they could park somewhere else.
Mitch?
Okay. It's very interesting what the resident said, because I was planning on opining on a few things that I've noticed before, I even heard from them. I go there a couple of times a week. And the only thing that I'll say is I do see the benefits of the bike corral as opposed to the vans that were there before. The only thing I'll say is I feel whenever we approve all these things or give like opinions, we have to tie enforcement to it, because there's complete zero enforcement. They do go, and I was going to say this before I heard the residents, they do go every which way. They don't use the bike lanes. They go through red lights. And especially in the evenings or after it's dark, which is most of the time when I go, I'm not there usually early in the day. So after hearing the residents, I would think that there should be no reason not to try the wider Murray Street, but no matter where it's placed, there has to be some enforcement, because somebody's going to get hit regardless of where it's placed. And I do see the benefits of it, so I'm not anti this. I definitely see the benefits as far as the delivery cars versus the cargo bikes. But there's zero enforcement. There's following the bike lanes, zero. And I'm not exaggerating, like there's zero. Anyway, so I would be for what the resident said, but there has to be enforcement wherever they're placed. And the other thing that Whole Foods has been cutting back on customer service. They've been like letting some of the staff go and having more things automated on the checkouts and everything. They're not, they shouldn't just be getting something for nothing without giving something back to the community. But like I said, I do see the benefits of it if there's enforcement that goes along with it. So I support what the residents just said.
Thank you. And I'll have Mimi speak. Mitch, if you put your hand down.
Hi, thank you. So I was desperately trying to find the original presentation. We had a presentation in October of 2020 regarding this bike corral. And if I'm remembering correctly, the bike corral wasn't supposed to house all the bike trailers perpendicularly to the street. That bike corral was supposed to be for, if I remember correctly, the illustration had like one trailer with one bicycle, and you're supposed to load it on there. It's not for storing the trailers. If they want to store the trailers, they should do so in their own space, it seems to me. And so either, I'm not trying to say like the presentation was misleading, but it seems like they're using this public space for storage, and I'm not entirely sure that they want that. Thank you.
Listen, it went away. My hands all just, my whole background changed.
All good. I see James has his hand up.
James,
Yes.
you call on,
unmute
I
yourself.
can't see hands.
Yep, all good. I'll manage it for a sec.
I just wanted to swing the conversation back, and maybe somebody can explain to me, maybe someone from DOT can explain how a pilot program was approved in this specific location when the bikes are required to cross the street to get to the bike lane, which in and of itself presents a huge safety issue for motorists and for the bicyclists. When Murray Street was potentially a viable alternative, although there wasn't a bike lane, there is one there now, and they can get right into the bike lane without having to cross traffic. Right then and there, if someone can explain to me just that, I would appreciate that as a resident, and as a New Yorker, whose idea that was.
So I think
Jennifer?
as Lucian said, the team from DOT that did install this is not in attendance, but maybe the Jennifer, who is the CB1 representative from DOT, has answers for us there.
I actually don't. I'll have to take this back and find out more about it because I'm not sure about Murray Street itself. If it was something they might have looked at already, but I have to see what happened there.
I think that would make a lot of sense. There's no silver bullet. However, just looking at the topography, we would assume that we would want delivery people not having to cross the street on a bike in a hitch filled with boxes if they didn't have to. They could roll right on to a bike lane. I mean, I believe fairly recently there were a whole 300 or 400 miles of bike lanes now, new ones developed. So potentially having someone enter a bike lane versus crossing a street, really busy street, and entering a bike lane would make a lot of sense. That would be helpful, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, although I can say that Murray Street, like I said, is all commercial driveways, or they are directly in front of a residence. So Murray is not as ideal as people are making it sound like it is. But also the problem, as Mimi brought up, I do not believe those trailers are parked there all night. They're put out there during the day in preparation for loading. But it is a complete mystery to me why they don't tip one sideways when they're going to load it and then take off with it, all within the parking lane. Why they leave it perpendicular to the curb, that's a mystery to me.
Must be easier
Yeah.
for the drivers.
No, actually it isn't. I have a picture of that. It's not. They would be better off to go straight, which angling the trailer and then hitching the bike in front of it would be actually easier for them.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that is it laziness or there's something, because that's how they
don't
do
know.
it without regard for
Is-
anybody else.
Is there a Jennifer, is there a maximum number of bicycles and hitches that are allowed? I mean, are there anything in the permit itself which talks about the number of bikes? Because that's probably why. I mean, they have a lot of bikes and a lot of corrals and a lot of hitches, so there's probably no way to load it. Of course, it would be safer and better, but again, I'm not really sure what the permit says. Does anyone know?
I don't. Jen, do you have any
I don't
idea?
have- I don't have that answer.
Okay, yeah, no. We'll have to get that answer for you. And the DOT, broader than just Jen, were invited, and they had said they just were not prepared to do this at this time. Not a surprise, given that the program was just made permanent, so they have a lot of work to do.
Well, sure, absolutely, and I think knowing these things might be very helpful. You know, in continuing this discussion. Certainly, what the permit says in terms of the number of vehicles that are supposed to be there. Yeah,
James,
I mean,
I don't
hopefully,
mean to interrupt, but I want to make sure that we let these guys keep going. Is there a
Sure.
way to get the commitment from Jen, at least on behalf of the DOT, that this will not be made a permanent installation, and that the consideration of the residents and CB1 before it becomes permanent on Warren Street?
So I will say this is going to be an ongoing discussion. I think one thing I could actually be able to offer this group is to maybe have a walkthrough with us. That's something that we can schedule in the upcoming weeks.
Great, thank you all.
Oh, Betty, you're on mute.
I would recommend that we postpone some of this, schedule a walkthrough, do that, and then reconvene when the DOT has a better grounding on exactly what they're doing as they move towards a permanent situation. Because there are too many things that are just unknowns at this time. For people to feel satisfied that they were listened to and what's happening, which is what I think people really want. So if that's all right with the people in those buildings, I think the best answer would be to wait, schedule. Okay, I'm glad to see that. Why don't we get back to you about when we can schedule time with the DOT for a walk around, and then we'll move forward from there with a broader meeting.
that sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Great, yes, and Jen will be waiting to hear from you about a time.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for the nice presentation. I
Now, I'm sorry.
don't-
Go ahead, Michael.
I was just gonna say I need sharing privileges back, but I interrupted you, Lucian.
Got it. Gotcha. I'm gonna throw this at you. Our Warren Street neighbors, you're welcome to please stay for the remainder of the meeting. There's lots of other great stuff on the agenda for you all. I'm gonna put the link in for you to sign in, but I do encourage you to sign in. You'll be able to get the newsletter if you click the yes button, and then you'll be sent all of our agendas every week, all the updates. So you'll know whenever there's something that's really important that's within your interests, or any updates on this, just in case, who knows, 5 years in the future, there's another bike corral going somewhere. So anyway, so please sign in. I'm going to put the link in, and we encourage all of our neighbors to come to all the meetings. Thank you so much.
Lucian, can I just ask you a question on the technology? I just had trouble and I had to come back on, and I thought I was just sending you a chat saying I can't unmute myself, and and then it said to all panelists. Is it only? I'm hoping it's only going to you, because I didn't.
It
mean
went
to,
to everybody, but I did see it, Mitch, and I was able to promote you
No,
to
but how do I-
panelist.
I don't want to
Mitch,
bother other
the-
people. So how do I do?
I think it's a little buggy. I think because we're using, I'm testing out the new version of WebEx. This is the first committee to use it. This is why we have a co-host. But there's a couple things that are a little buggy with it, and
Okay.
The chat is definitely one of them.
Why don't we just stay with the old version?
We just need to at some point,
I'm sorry.
we'll need
That
to
was an
move
old,
to the
old
next
man's,
version.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, as we move on to the next one, I want to show you some of the things that I am aware of going on there.
Sorry, do you want me to walk through these slowly, Betty?
No, but as you can see, one of the concerns they're talking about are craziness. Why is this particular vendor standing in the middle of the street with a cargo trailer, not attached to anything, just standing there? And you can see how the bus is pushed over against the northern lane, which is over the bike lane and the parking lane. So I understand the craziness and I want you to see, but some of it is unexplainable behavior by the people who are actually riding the bikes. So some of this stuff is just plain organizational issues. So want to go to the
Here's
next
a few
one.
more.
Yeah, well, you can see the bicycles. If you leave the trailers perpendicular to the curb, which they do for some reason, versus angling them or making them perpendicular to the curb, then the bike is across the through lane and they're interfering with traffic. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter because the buses are, the trucks are double parked, and so they're just in front of a truck. It all adds up to the craziness.
Betty, the way they have it now, for their side, would they think they can fit more of those bikes in that if they because it's perpendicular as opposed to angled?
Because they are stored inside in the store overnight, all these things are stored inside overnight. It could be that they just efficiently, in their minds, take out the trailers, take out the bikes, and then wait for the logistics company, which does the deliveries, to load them up and take them out one by one. Obviously, there's a breakdown in communication and how it's done.
Yes.
But I think that could go a long way to solving a big chunk of the problems, keeping it in the parking lane and keeping them moving one at a time.
But if
Because then they
would
would be
follow
directed to go in the correct direction.
yeah, unless there's enforcement, the people with small children are going to be, there's going to be an accident, like the lawyer said, because
Children aren't really a problem unless they're crossing mid-street, which I can't do because there's no curb cut there.
well,
And they
no,
shouldn't be doing at the bus route.
well, that's not
I-
what one of the parents just said, Betty, from PS 234.
I know, and I don't understand what they're talking about. The street is mid-block, I get that. But do
Because
they really have their
cargo bikes
children
come
cross
by which ways?
mid-block rather than going to the corner? That doesn't make sense to me.
Betty, when they return, they come back against traffic and they cross Greenwich Street, the opposite, going down the wrong way, coming back. And they
No, go back 2 slides. You'll see them. They leave this area. There you see them going. This one to the right is actually kind of jackknifing, showing how awkward it is to come out. If you go back one more slide.
No, I'm not disputing what you're saying on that. I'm saying when they come back from their deliveries, because I see this all the time, they come back whatever is the most quickest way for them, like any delivery person. So they're coming back against traffic on Warren Street, coming from Greenwich. They're coming from the right side of Greenwich. They're coming from the left side of Greenwich. They're coming whatever is the quickest way to come back, regardless of the direction of traffic and regardless of the lights. That's what I think. That's what I see. And that's what I think the young lady was talking about with the children. It has nothing to do with what you're saying, which I don't disagree with.
Yeah, no, and again, I think we organized because some of them just come from West Street.
I don't mean to interrupt Betty and Mitch. I do see Mimi has her hand up. Did you,
Okay,
Mimi,
I'm
did you
sorry.
have something to
Yes,
add
please,
on this
I
topic?
can't see hands.
Yep, sorry, and I'll keep a closer eye on this. I think I let Mimi languish for a second there.
Okay.
Hey, so I was sent the presentation from October, and it appears that there's 2 parts to what they had added to Warren Street. There's new bicycle parking, which is for everybody, and which is just for the trailers and loading. So it appears in some of the images that we saw earlier that some of the bicycle parking is being used for loading. And that's all I got. But yeah, that's what I've observed so far.
Yeah, no, we need some reorganization. Do you want to move on towards the second item? We have people waiting for that. And this is special considerations for student drop-offs and pickups at the Tightest school. And again, this is
Right.
frustrating because I can't see
Tightest
who the
school is
atten-
located where?
on John, is it 90 John Street? So it's just east of Gold Street. But before you get to Cliff Street, which is the one way that dead ends into it.
And I do
And
know
Lucian?
that I think Natalie is in the attendee list who's going to
Yes,
be
I was-
presenting. Natalie, is there anyone else from your side that you would like me to make a panelist?
No, it's just me.
Just you? Okay, great. And
Yes, if you'd
do
move
you
on to the
want-
next slide first.
You guys can do I mean, you can do the control. Yeah.
Yeah, just because I wanted to just to show where it is. You can see the red dot here, which is the 90 John Street. That's where they're located. Next one. Next slide. Yeah, to let you know for the street signage, because I know that'll come up too. It is a 3-hour commercial parking directly in front of the school, but I can tell you it's all placards. And if you go to the next one, I think, oh, you can see the school. These are family members and other people in front of the school at the time school's ending. And you can see the school buses, and you can see all the cars that are parked with placards. This is what it really looks like for them. And why don't you let Natalie give her presentation? Because yes, there's backup that goes out onto Gold Street.
There, and it goes all the way back up to John Street, up to Broadway. We're new to the neighborhood, so we opened in July of 2019. We were renting space from 25 Pine Street. We moved into our building in August of 2019, and we didn't have as many students at that time. We didn't have as many students taking the bus at that time, and so it was a little bit easier to manage. But before I even signed the lease, I researched how to sort of get a no parking zone or a school drop-off zone or some kind of way to ease this situation, because I know that John Street's a very narrow street, and I knew that this was going to be an issue. And I've emailed a couple of times. I called 311. I've emailed a bunch of different offices, and all of this is done through the office's website, so it's impossible to sort of like have a record of the emails that I sent or the people that I reached out to. But I never really got a response, and so I think then a global pandemic started and everybody kind of retreated into their homes, and so now we're back here. We returned back to school in July, and the city was very quiet. And because we're a special education school, we were allowed to come back to school in July because our services were needed for our students. And so the city was very quiet. Traffic was very light. We had a lot of parents who weren't comfortable sending their kids on the bus. And so a lot of people were bringing their kids in. And as the year went on and as the world started to open up a little bit more and parents became more comfortable sending their kids on the bus, the situation just got worse and worse. And it became really difficult. It's becoming really difficult to manage. And so we have like a really fluent system of how we do this. We have like a team of people who are ushering kids in and out of school to get them in and on and off the bus. But it's still not safe and it's not functional for the neighborhood. And I think that Patrick, who is one of the panelists, can let you guys know as a neighbor at 80 John Street how disruptive it can be. There's lots of horns blowing, there's lots of traffic, and it's noisy, and it really sort of like it impacts the neighborhood a lot. And I want to be a friendly neighbor. I want to be a neighbor that people don't hate.
Natalie, do you want to mention the difficulty of honking specifically for your
Yes,
population
so we have,
as well?
yeah, we have students who have hearing loss and hearing aids and bilateral hearing loss. We have students who have very rare genetic conditions and diagnoses and have difficulty with loud noises and sensory processing. And this can become something that's dysregulating, but also the navigating of like boarding and exiting the school bus in between cars and things like that. We have students who elope and will run away. And it becomes a matter of safety. And it's scary to see, to think that somebody could be, hiding between a car or not seen or something like that. We're one-to-one almost, so we always have adults there, but it's still possible that something can happen. The other day when we were in the middle of dismissal, there was somebody getting detained down the street by the police. And so we had buses that were blocked because there was police activity in the middle of the street. And not to say that you know, can't happen anywhere on any street in every given moment, but we are in a situation where our population is growing, our enrollment's growing, and this situation isn't going to get easier or better. It's going to get more challenging and worse and more dangerous, and we don't want anybody getting injured. We don't want any of our students getting hurt. We don't want to be adding to the noise pollution in the neighborhood. And we're open to any solution possible. We're flexible with what we will do to make this work. Open streets, school loading, unloading zone. The only thing we can't do is change our entrance location, because we do have students who are, you know, not independently able to ambulate and require door-to-door drop-off. And so they have to be dropped off in front of the building so that they can access the school with our barrier-free entrance. And there's other pictures, so if anybody wants to pop through the...
Yeah, I'll go through and just tell me to stop when I want to stop. I think you've gone through a lot of this, but here's some shots.
We've thought about approaching and asking for a modified school zone in front of the building, but as Betty mentioned, all of the parking that is in front of the building is placard. And so even if we modified the parking signs and said no standing or school zone, those placards could park there without any kind of, you know, penalty. And so we thought about open streets, and KinderCare on John Street did say that they would join us in the request. I haven't had the chance to speak to our other neighbors. One of them's an office building that doesn't really have big deliveries or anything coming through. There is a deli on the corner, and there is like a not a deli, but like Jubilee, which is like a little grocer food store. And then there's a 7-Eleven like just down the street, and there are some other businesses that may or may not need deliveries at certain times, but our day begins at 8 a.m., 8:30. The students arrive, and then 3 p.m. is dismissal. We can't use Gold Street because it's a one-way in the wrong direction, but also very narrow, and there's scaffolding, so the buses really can't use that area. But we're open to any suggestions or solutions to this problem, as we know it's going to get worse and be more difficult for the neighborhood the longer we do not address it.
Are you finished?
Yeah. We have a
And
little
I'm
bit of
gonna
time,
ask
right?
Patrick if he would speak, since he can speak to the neighborhood as well.
Sure, thanks,
Sure,
Betty.
and then after that, I'll just mention that Mitch does have his hand up. So after you, Patrick, Mitch will. I do see you, so we'll ask you.
Great. Thanks, Betty. Thanks, Michael. And first of all, it's a little overdue, but welcome to Natalie and the Tightest School to the neighborhood. It's a challenge, of course, and it's one I think we definitely need to solve. I can barely describe to you what it's like every single day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, especially during this time when many people have been working from home. And it is not Natalie's fault. It is not the school's fault. They've been trying to figure this out, but not getting a really great sense of guidance from the city on it. And as Natalie pointed out, I've noticed that this has gotten worse lately. And knowing what the Tightest School is, it occurred to me that there has got to be some additional layer of cruelty here in some of the vulnerabilities of their students. So that's why I reached out to Natalie to see if there was interest in doing something about this issue, the backup. So what happens is, you have, and Natalie could give the numbers, but I'm going to guess somewhere between 8 to a dozen or more smaller school buses.
13 right now.
Think of an Access-a-Ride type of sized van that picks up the students in front of the school, many because legally that's the only place they can be picked up or dropped off. But on the narrow streets of John and then Gold, it backs up the traffic anytime you have a school bus stopped. Drivers are unforgiving. They don't care. And, maybe they don't know what the student population's vulnerabilities are, but it does drive me absolutely insane that people will just sit there and lay on their horns and really, I think, create just a nightmare of a safety issue. But what also occurred to me is, having been on this community board for a number of years, I remember that we dealt with this once before. For those who remember, when we were geographically organized and had the financial district committee in 2016, we did this and supported an application for Quad Prep, which is a special needs school co-located with the Pine Street School at 25 Pine Street. Pine Street's a little bit wider, but it's got the same sort of issue with commercial, placard, and a single large residential place there. It's also a one-way street that feeds, it's an important one-way street that feeds into a number of other one-way streets. And I have not been over there this week, but we certainly have no reason to believe that it's not doing anything other than going swimmingly. So I think there's a model for this, there's a precedent for this, and it's something that the community board should support one way or another. I don't have the answers on what the solution should be, whatever works best for the Tightest school and frankly, the residential building at 99 John Street. So I will say too, the Financial District Neighborhood Association, of which I'm the president, another of the FDNA board members is a resident at 99 John Street. Our board is unanimously in favor of supporting the Tightest school to get some relief here. We know it'll help the residential community out, and we'd co-apply if that needed to be the situation. But if we're talking about closing the street for any period of time, we just need to make sure that we double check that with the residential building that's there and how they can get their access, which I'm sure we can solve around that. But in any event, the school, these students, this student population, their safety needs to come first.
Well, we deeply appreciate that. And I mean, it does pose a lot of different difficulties for us as far as like dysregulation and emotional, physical dysregulation and self-injurious behavior and things like that, that can be, like the sounds and the waiting and the traffic can be setting events that lead to those episodes and those difficulties. So it's definitely causing issues that we're just not aware of until this is solved. And so this is how we live. And so I know that students could probably start the day off better, but also not be experiencing this level of distress in the morning.
And I just want to add too, I mean, it seems crazy to me that we even have to have this conversation over, I don't know, 3 or 4 parking spots for placard cars. That is completely bananas that we're faced with that kind of situation. And I don't know if there's a way to prevent placard completely, if you change the designation there somehow, but that seems to be one way to sort of solve it and then enforce it. I mean, my God, NYPD traffic's 2 doors down at 66 John Street. I think they could figure that out. But anyway, that's more of just a practical.
Thank you. And who else was waiting?
Thanks. So we've got Mitch and then Mimi after Mitch. So go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, Patrick kind of answered a few of the things and expressed some of the same opinions that I have. Basically, if I'm sorry for stumbling, the only solution that I see is to somehow have those 3 or 4 spots, deemed like no placard, but then enforced. And my understanding, over the last couple of months, didn't the mayor's office kind of set out to like some more like parking enforcement people to specifically target placards in certain areas? So the fact that these children are so vulnerable, is heartbreaking. It's whether, maybe if Natalie, I don't know, contacted one of the newspapers or something, because it just seems that if there was some publicity for this, it should be a no-brainer, because I don't see how, unless those couple of cars are not there, whether it's open streets or not, it's going to be the same situation. So like what Patrick said, if there's some way, I know Jennifer's listening in, if there's some way that through to the mayor's office, the police, one of the local newspapers, or news shows, like on, channel whatever, New York News 1, that seems to be the only solution for the safety of these vulnerable children. And it's, you know, so I'm with Patrick on, I think that's the only solution. But
Thanks, Mitch and Mimi.
Thanks. I'd like to start with saying that I'm really glad to see your school in the neighborhood, and you have a lot of people in my life that would have benefited from such a school. In regards to the traffic issue, we have all agreed that we're interested in reducing congestion in Lower Manhattan. And I know that there's situations where we need to have vehicles, but is there any way, I'm like kind of new here or whatever, but is there any way that we can prevent certain kinds of vehicles from driving on certain streets? Like, I would love to take cars out of Seaport. You know what I mean? Like, on a grander scale, if I was in charge of everything, we would barely have the kind of through traffic that we have on these narrow streets. Like, is there a way that we could say that like only school buses could drive on this street, or the accessoride in school buses? Is that an option?
I sort of doubt that, but I'm going to leave that to Jennifer Leong.
Unfortunately, that's not an option. I mean, there are locations where we try to use the local truck delivery only, but aside from that, there's no way to really restrict any type of vehicles from entering the street.
Hey, Betty, wasn't there a proposal to do a larger restricted access plan for the financial district? Patrick, do you recall?
Yeah, so you may be referring, Lucian, to the Fighter Neighborhood Association's Make Way for Lower Manhattan. It's not exactly a plan, but a problem statement and a call to action to help organize the streets better. It's not necessarily saying this street should become, shared street, or that one should become pedestrian only, or anything like that. It really for tools to deal with issues like this, but also to deal with the crowded sidewalks that we have. But I think that may be what you're referring to, Lucian.
Yep, that was
Although,
it.
Patrick, on page 30, there is a map, and this is one of the streets, because we'd spoken about it, that they recommend making it a shared street with no parking allowed.
That would be nice. I feel like we
I was
should
going to say, which would be kind of
Yeah.
a little piece of the grander plan that the Make Way for Lower Manhattan.
would that take care of the
promoting.
placard, Betty, on because like in front of the school?
Well, their proposal was absolutely no parking by anybody. There just would be none, so that people could move up by the curb to do drop-offs or pickups. So if somebody in the residential has to make a move or something, there could be kind of one-off deals, but no.
But would that take care of the
long-term
placard? I think that would be wonderful for that school, but would that take care of the placard? Because that seems to be the crux of the issue, like Patrick said.
I believe and I leave it to Jen to answer this, but isn't that true on shared street? You can actually restrict to no parking?
For shared streets, vehicles are allowed to pass through, but then I think for some shared streets, there is no parking.
Right, but we're not talking about parking. We're talking about the placard, which seems to be go above all laws. So.
Well, but this would include that. With no parking, they really mean nobody
Okay,
to stop.
then it just need to be enforced then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what we looked at to say, do we go? Because what you can't see on this is the corner by Cliff Street. If you look at the northwest corner, that's where the kinder care is. So you've got the very young infants and very young children up to age 5. And then you can see the smarter toddler and nursery school is actually within the building with the residences at 99. So there are a good number of people moving around with strollers and carriages and young sibling on this particular block.
It would just seem that there should be some type of mechanism to ban placards in front of certain like high-risk places without having to go to total extreme. But I mean, like, if that's the only thing to do, then great. But there needs to be some mechanism that where, like, people with disabilities have to have the right to the curb over placards.
Well, what about asking for a shared street with no parking?
Is it
Which
possible
would
to get
allow
a shared,
drop-offs and drops, yes.
oh, is it possible to get like a shared street with no parking and also like specific through traffic? Is there anything for only specific through traffic? Like,
No, they do not restrict the through traffic, which is important because Cliff Street, the only way you can get access to it, given that John Street's a one-way street, is
I
really
see that.
coming that way.
So Betty, a shared street, if you can just remind, that would be like the pedestrians walking in the street also?
That's allowed, yes.
I mean, it looks great on paper. I just, with the buses coming in to pick up and drop off, I mean, for the 13 buses, it almost seems like some knucklehead will be on their cell phone with their headphones on, with their face down. And, I just would like to see the buses to be able to pull up on the curb in front of the school, and for some city agency to enforce the no placard for those 3, 4, 5 spots.
If I can
Yeah,
address that
there is
quickly,
no
Mitch.
placard.
If I could address that, I think that's a good point about, pedestrian safety on shared streets. And that specific block is very, very short, relatively speaking. And the Tightest school is more or less in the middle, little on the easterly side, but more or less in the middle of that block. So I think you'd have the buses kind of slow rolling in and out, which
Okay.
is the idea and the notion of a shared street. And the easiest way to sort of think about it is when you drive in a parking lot. If you go out to Costco in Brooklyn, you drive through the parking lot, you go really slow. People are weaving in and out with their carts, and they're walking into the store. It's the same kind of negotiation that happens. Drivers pay attention, pedestrians pay attention, and they figure it all out. But it could be the perfect place to
Okay.
sort of pilot that idea, because it's small enough that you're not giving drivers a long sort of runway to figure it out, or pedestrians just popping in and out.
Sounds
Yes, and
good.
Platt Street, the next one south, is one way in the same direction. So if there are people who want to go faster, I think they'll quickly learn when they see the 5 miles per hour to go one more
Okay.
block and take Platt Street instead of taking John Street.
Good luck speeding down that street.
We have, and
So
the
Mitch
same,
and Betty, sorry to interrupt, Mitch. I just saw Detta has her hand up in the panelists.
Yes, please call because I can't see them.
Yep, sure.
don't know where
So
they
yeah,
are.
Detta, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that my experience with shared streets has been very positive. There's an east-west shared street near Grand Central. There's a north-south section of a shared street near Madison Square Park. They're typically done with a very good design. So only motorists who have to go through there choose to. Anyone else chooses some other route, and you really don't find the illegal parking happening. So I'm just saying, I think that's a solution I would definitely push for.
Yeah, that sounds great. Betty, I'll add my 2 cents. I do also
Yeah,
want
please
to
do,
thank.
and then call on anyone else because I
Yep.
can't see them. Thanks.
All good. Yeah, I don't see actually anyone else with their hand up at the moment, but I did also want to thank Natalie for coming. It's really nice to meet you. I'm so glad your school's here, and I'm glad you've come to us, to try to find a solution, because it really does. It saddens me that your students are in the situation that they're in. It saddens to me that it's causing it's a destabilizing situation, being honked at and being forced in that traffic. So I definitely want to try to find a solution. And to me, there's some urgency to that. I want to try to make sure that we find a solution, and perhaps that means there's a long-term solution and a short-term solution, because I want to make sure that these students are both safe and in a safe environment, sensory-wise, as well, as quickly as possible. So I don't know if that means, is the quickest thing to do the open streets application to start, and then have a long-term push to see if a shared street could be viable there. So I guess my main question to Jen is what the process is for. I'm a little new, and I think the city might be a little new to the shared streets. Is there a current process for an application for a shared street as opposed to an open street?
I will have to check on that. I'll be able to provide some information.
Got it. Because I see. No, go ahead.
Yeah, for either open street or shared street, but then I know there's a process for it. I don't have the details right now, so I'll share that information when I get it.
Got it. Because that would seem to solve some of the problems. I mean, the main issue, of course, or the first issue is that placard parking takes up the curb space. And it would be nice to change signage to say no placard parking, but we've seen, I mean, I live on Pine Street and there's no standing anytime on the block across from the school that Patrick was talking about. And that's all of a sudden been like consistently parked in by placard parking now. So we've seen, at least my experience in the financial district, is that if a car can physically park in a space, it will park there. The placards will park there no matter what the signage is because the enforcement isn't there. So if signage isn't going to do the trick, then perhaps the open street situation in which it might prevent cars from backing up behind the buses, which would at least alleviate, it wouldn't allow students to be right on the curb, but it would at least alleviate the honking. But a better solution would be, and again, another question for Jen, is there an ability in a shared street to restrict parking on the curb? Like, could there be I mixed up my verbiage, open street. And an open street application, is it possible to restrict parking, or is open street purely just the lower mile per hour and local access only?
So for open street, there is two tracks. There's two types. One of them is for a temporary full closure, and the other one is temporary limited access, I believe it is. I think I forgot which one is which, but that's something that's on our website. One of them actually doesn't allow parking.
Okay, got it. Great, thanks. So I think those are my questions. I see Mitch has his hand up, and then I'll throw it back to you.
Is Natalie still there? Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. Just like I agree with everything Michael just said, for the medium and the long-term solutions, but for just right now, how like when you're going past a construction site and there's there's 2 or 3 people that are standing, like with the signs slow or stop, when the children are boarding, I know that the buses probably have their stop thing out, but sometimes like cars, like 3 or 4 cars back, can't see it and they just honk. Is there any aid or parent volunteer that maybe with like one of those big octagon signs that could stand like maybe 3 or 4 cars back down the street with whether it's a disabled children loading or some type of thing so that they can see that?
Most of the time we have staff out there sort of managing this and relaying these messages and trying to intervene, and when we can intervene, sometimes people stop honking, sometimes people don't care.
Right, I know that. Are they just intervening as people, or do they have the big signs like that the construction workers have at construction sites? Because
we've been yelled at by the NYPD. Like, it's not really a pleasant situation.
That's sick, Natalie. That's freaking sick. Okay, then I'm at a loss. It's a sick society that we're living in.
I mean, it does really disrupt the flow of traffic, but these kids have to get to and from school safely, and this is the only way that they can.
What is the cops that were like giving you hell? What was their response?
Just yelling at us to keep it moving and telling us that we're blocking traffic, and we're like, yes, we're aware. I mean, there's not much we can do about it, though. We've tried to. We've tried.
After you've told them you're dealing with children with disabilities?
They can see them. We're loading and unloading students who are in assistive devices and wheelchairs and non-ambulatory.
Take some video and send it to some media. I mean, I don't know what else to say because that's sick.
Right, but that's part of the thing, because Patrick and I have been talking about this. Not only does shared street play into where FIDI was going anyway with their plan, Make Way for Lower Manhattan, but in fact, I'm not so sure we don't need a permanent designation with signage of 5 miles per hour without putting a burden on the school to move the barriers on and off. Because of Cliff Street, and we don't want to aggravate those residents with, you're cutting off all access for me to get home. We
Are,
don't know that, and though I'd be interested in Natalie's input, it almost seems like shared street may be the best route.
Right. Don't
Go.
agree with everything you just said, Betty.
With no
Just,
parking.
just on a human nature, though, the fact that the cops that should be enforcing the helping of these kids are doing the opposite, something needs to be like publicized about that. Because
And
that's separate from any laws or rules that would help the situation.
Sure, I don't disagree. I see, Lucian, that you've got your hand up.
Another benefit of this version of WebEx is I can actually raise my hand. So thank you for letting me have a second. One question about that block where the shared street idea is being kind of evaluated here in the meeting. Are there any restaurants on the street, on that street? No? Okay. Because I think that if there were some additional rationale for having an open street for the promotion of business, then the Alliance may be interested in helping.
There is one. There's Stout's at the corner of Gold.
Stout is at the
John.
corner. They just reopened.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we went around asking our neighbors, we could, Smarter Teller, KinderCare have already agreed to co-sponsor and co-request this with us because their parents and their students, their children have all the same fears and concerns about the safety of their ability to arrive. And they have infants, they have really little guys coming in and out. But Stout is on the corner and they might be more inclined to participate in this as well. I get concerned about their deliveries and things like that, but we're not trying to interfere with that. We're trying to limit the other traffic.
And to be clear, they can still get deliveries and the buses can come.
They get their deliveries in the back off Platt Street at Platt and Gold, I believe, anyway. They have a rear entrance. Used to be even a rear patron entrance, but I think they use it just for, they're a great neighbor too, by the way. So I can't even imagine them not being
I think they would be
supportive in every way possible. They literally collected blood in the pandemic.
I know. I think that they would be on board too. I know that as long as Gold Street is open, I think that Jubilee would be fine because they could still get deliveries. And as long as they're, I'm not even suggesting we restrict all traffic, but I'm just we have to limit something, or we have to have some way to get the kids closer to the curb so that the boarding and the getting on and off the bus is not so dangerous.
I definitely think that you have enough to approach the Downtown Alliance and see if they'll be your partner, because for a couple of reasons. One is they have a lot of expertise in managing these streets, but additionally they also have the person power to do the closures and openings at the scheduled times. So they may have interest, and I know that they've also had interest in the past of doing expanding the amount of pedestrianized area. So it's a good proof of concept, and I definitely think you'll have allies there. I'm not saying that they would definitely jump at the opportunity, but I do think you have a good rationale to propose it.
Lucian, I was going to ask if we went to a shared street, which would get rid of the burden of having to move barriers and do that, because there would be permanent signage up there saying 5 miles per hour. And eventually they would change the surface of the road by color, which is another cue to people that this is a different kind of street. The question then is, because I was going to go to Downtown Alliance and ask for their support, or at least that they would not be opposed to this. I do think we need to get everybody on board. And having the Financial District Neighborhood Association, we can get the community board. The question then is, do we ask for Gold to Cliff Street along John from Cliff, between Cliff and Gold, or do we ask to go all the way to Pearl Street? So I speak to you who know that street real well and who's on there. Are they an approachable group, or no, just go to Cliff Street and we'll worry about extending it in the future?
My only concern is that the corner is the post office on Pearl Street, but I think Pearl Street is the way to go, but what do you think?
I think I would have exactly that same concern. The businesses along John Street until you get to the post office, I'm sure are all, happy to play along. I don't know about the residences and the businesses along Cliff Street, but I do think in fairness, we'd have to consult with them because that is their only means of access. But I would also suggest considering thinking about the runway to getting there. It's a really short block. I can't stress that enough. So
It
if you
is. It's
start it
really
just
short.
at Gold, that's almost like you're to the Tightest school before you realize what's going on, that it might
Right.
make sense to back it up on John. There's 2 residential buildings, a Dunkin' Donuts, and the commercial loading bay for 1 Street. The
So you're breaking up.
I cannot imagine, and so I was
There's
saying
a
Dunkin' Donuts
city
rely with
bike
traffic,
parking
so I
right in
can't
front of,
imagine that
yeah. Sorry, Patrick, you're breaking
they're
up.
only
There's a city bike parking dock on John Street, right by 80, right by the entrance to 80 John Street. Then there's a fire hydrant, which placard cars are always parked in front of. And then there's like 2 or 3 commercial spots on that strip of John right before you get to Gold Street. And then from my corner of Gold and John to where Tightest's entrance is, there is another fire hydrant and then more commercial placard parking. I mean, I think if we had from 80, like in front of 80 John Street to in front of Tightest, or maybe a little bit further down, we could probably fit 6 or 7 buses on the curb.
And I would just suggest maybe thinking about going from William East to Cliff, just again to give that sort of runway for drivers to get used to it before they hit the Gold intersection and are really in the thick of the safety issue that we're most worried about.
I agree. That was kind of my, do we go, because it is such a short block to go from Gold to Cliff Street. Do you go to Pearl, or you're right, if you want them to slow up before they get to the schools, then you do back up to William Street. So the question really is the personalities that are along those streets.
And just, again, it's my building, 80 John Street, fully supportive of shared streets. We could talk to 85, figure it out, and then it's a Dunkin' Donuts. The commercial loading bay for 110 William Street, it goes in and underground, so there's no conceivable reason why they would object. All their business is done underground anyway.
Okay, and again, everyone has car access. It's
right.
Shared street means you just all kind of weave amongst each other, but it is 5 miles per hour, but nevertheless. But you think you're going in the direction of just removing parking from Gold to Cliff, or along the whole stretch of this shared street?
I mean,
I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but
my preference would be to remove the parking, but I don't know how that would be. You would have to have a cop there like all day enforcing it.
No, there may be a way with shared street to do that, where there just is no parking.
I'm just talking about like from
signage.
80 John to like 100 John. If you removed the parking, it would alleviate a lot of the issue, because it would free up curb space for the buses to pull up so that more traffic could get by.
Well, why don't, because I was going to just write a resolution, given that you're talking about going going west of Gold Street, why don't we take a little bit of time and put this together for next month? We can actually talk to the people, because what I want to do is when the resolution goes forward, and there definitely should be a resolution, and it should definitely be at a minimum Gold to Cliff Street as a shared street, eliminating parking, which we know is just placard parking anyway. So there's no real objection to that. But if we're going to back up, which has some beauty to it, we need to talk to those buildings. we should talk to the Downtown Alliance because they are a very important partner in the eyes of the DOT. So I would certainly want to get them on board, and I would expect them to.
Thanks, Betty. I
It would
see
take a
you,
little bit of
Lucian.
time.
You did put your hand back
Yes.
up. Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was a remnant or not.
Lucian, just speak up.
I was just flashing it. I just want to, just before you all break out to discuss it after the meeting as individual organizations and entities, I just want to point out that Cliff Street, if you close any part of John between Gold and Cliff, you're essentially making travel onto Cliff very difficult. And so you're essentially just closing Cliff as well because of the direction of traffic. So either, consider in your proposal also closing Cliff Street, narrowing it to only Cliff Street, or narrowing it between Cliff and Pearl. That way, vehicle operators can travel down John and take a left on Cliff, but you'll still have the entire sidewalk between Cliff and Pearl, because in the consideration to close, they're going to have to take Cliff into account as well, unless they change the direction of travel on that street. So it's that's the only kind of like that's the only kind of fly in the ointment that I see right now for the current plan that you're discussing.
You think that a shared street would be too much restriction to going to Cliff Street?
I mean, but just in terms of travel, whatever buy-in you'll need for John, you'll also need from Cliff, because whatever bottleneck you create on John will likewise impact the ability to travel onto Cliff.
Okay, because that's why we were kind of discarding the idea of a shared street. I'm sorry, of an open street, was that it was too big a burden on those simply going to Cliff Street. But a shared street, while it's only 5 miles an hour, it doesn't restrict traffic.
It doesn't. No. So just in terms of your different plans, I mean, if you're going to approach the alliance to have a temporary solution, that you'll want to take that into account. They may have issues doing a open streets plan if you're doing a short-term solution because of Cliff Street. That's all.
Yeah, do you think there's a big cause really to go to an open street, or just going into a shared street in the first place with the removal of parking in the parking lane?
I don't, just in terms of how fast you want this treatment, I don't know if DOT would be able to mobilize to do the sort of traffic analysis that's necessary and do the striping, by the beginning of the school year. That's something that Jennifer, she may remember how long it took to set up the shared street on by the Bull.
On Whitehall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Jennifer, do you remember how long it took?
some of that new painting is going in right now, and we had discussed that I think a year ago, right?
I mean,
True,
we're a
it does
12-month program, so we're here through the summer anyway. Not the entire summer. We do 6 weeks over the summer, but this will be our longest break actually this year, from August 13th to September 13th. But we have time to work on whatever we need to work on to get this done effectively and to try to mitigate loss to everybody in the community.
Yes, and the shared street signs went up in advance of dealing with the roadbed itself. The 5
Jennifer,
miles per hour, and that changed a long time ago on Whitehall.
But Jennifer, do you remember how long it took from inception to signs going up for DOT to feel comfortable making that change?
I don't recall. I know it's a process in itself. It does take time, at least a couple of months. But it's hard to say. Let me check with my team, because right now I don't know where we're doing any share streets. I mean, I haven't had any new ones that I'm working on, because right now it's concentrated on open streets. So let
I
me
think
go
you
back.
should definitely kind of put that in like the very long-term solution pile, because it just,
Okay.
no, I'm not saying that to you, Jennifer. I'm saying that to the committee, because I think I would guess it was over a year, or it would be over a year by the time you got something in the hopper for DOT to, get to it. I wouldn't, I would be very surprised if it was under a year. So just have
If only money
please
had been
have
set
some other
aside years ago to
considerations.
study this. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
CB1 jokes.
Yeah, but I agree with what Lucian was saying. I personally would support coming out in favor of some sort of open street application as being the quickest possible solution for Titus and these guys. And should that prove successful, then asking DOT to start looking into the process of a possible shared street. But that's where I am. I see Detta, you've got your hand up too if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I support your idea of like going two routes, both doing what's the quickest and most expeditious, and also still going for what's the gold standard, because I do think a shared street is really a great design. And once it's installed, there's nobody who has to be responsible for moving barriers or anything. But if a open street is better in the short term, then take advantage of that program. But I really do hope to move forward with a shared street.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty unanimous. I'm going to ask Lucian then, are we better off to leave it open and get together with Ed Pinkar and others and see what we can do before writing a resolution, which may box us into something that we can get more than that. My concern being a lot of shared streets, they don't go after the parking, and that is one of the huge problems.
I'm a big fan. I think all the above, requests and solutions are the way to go. I think you've identified lots of different tools in the toolkit that can serve short, medium, long term. In between now and next month, since the Five Eye Neighbors, doesn't need to have a resolution to engage with the alliance on a proposal. If the neighbors and the Tightest school are, of the mind to propose, really all these solutions and have the alliance weigh in on them before the next meeting to see if you can get their position on it. I think the community board would be in a very good position to know kind of how hard they need to press and what support they can expect, which I think would help move the resolution from the committee to the full board with a lot more support next month. So I think that getting those ducks in a row would definitely be great strategically from knowing sort of what to ask for and how to ask, and B, knowing what the possibilities are and timelines.
Yeah, I will take that. Lucian, Natalie, why don't you stay put on what you're doing and we'll give you some advice on where to go, especially with Patrick. Let me know if you want contacts at Downtown Alliance, because I'd be happy to talk to Josh to see what he thinks. Because he'll deal with Jessica on that to make sure we have no opposition from them, and I don't expect any from them. But if you want to talk to some of the other owners on the streets that you consider potentially good ones, such as going from William Street and or going toward Pearl Street, that would be very helpful to get that information from you and Natalie about those. Meanwhile,
Yeah, I can go to all the surrounding neighbors and ask them, what they're willing to participate in for sure.
Yes, because hopefully we can go to an open street. If it is a transition, then there's the burden of moving barriers and picking hours, and it is more work involved. But then, Lucian, if we can work with the DOT and Jen to find out a little bit more about the toolbox options for this very specific case.
And I'll introduce Natalie to Jessica and Josh. And
Great.
I think the case is better coming from Natalie.
And Natalie, have you been able to visit or had the opportunity to visit some of the other open streets that are in the neighborhood?
We were actually on Pine Street for a while, and I am familiar with some of the other open streets in the neighborhood. I think that, what our desire is really just to engage in the path of least resistance and safety, but also like thinking long term, like what's the best solution long term for everybody. And we're willing to do or try whatever everybody thinks will be best without rocking too many boats. We want to be good neighbors, but we also want to keep our kids safe. And we're grateful for your support and your help. So we're open to any and all suggestions.
Oh, I think that the solutions that you've discussed here today and the way you're approaching it, I think is definitely the conservative approach. And so I think that there's always going to be those who are not in favor of changing the way the streets are used. But, I think that, in terms of talking to all the right people and taking some time to really think it through and all the different long and short-term options, I think that no one really is going to accuse anyone of rushing through on this, for sure.
Yes, and I do actually expect that shared street will be better received because they don't feel restricted the way open streets can, just too many people driving.
I agree with that.
And with Cliff Street, that is a big issue because it really is their only access.
Yeah,
Is to come downtown.
We're perfectly fine with shared street the only thing that we would need to limit is the parking.
Which can be done on shared streets. So yeah, why don't everyone gather their information, get the context on those specific blocks. Then we'll put together a very specific request for what we want on exactly which street segments. And I'll work with you too, Patrick, because I've been drafting a resolution already, so. Everyone all right with that?
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Betty, to the committee.
Great, then
Yeah,
let's
that
plan
sounds
on
good.
moving
Good
forward
idea.
next month.
So we'll have a discussion again next month to see where we're at and if a resolution would be helpful. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and next month's really important because we take the month of August off. And I do
you're
want
right.
it done before we take off.
Great.
Even though we're here, we're not, there can't be a vote.
Mhm.
Thank you. We'll be ready. We'll hit the streets tomorrow and start knocking on doors.
Great, Natalie, and you have my email, so do stay in touch.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely evening, and I really deeply appreciate your help. So do all of our students. So thank you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Everyone, the
Michael,
meeting's
can I
not
trouble
over.
you with the slides?
One more. So resolution possibly next month.
Yes,
DOT
next month.
updates. Jen, we'll put you on the spot.
Hi, good evening. I don't have major updates, but I do have some that I can share tonight. Let me start with some of the past resolutions for stop sign requests. There was one for May 2019 for Peck Slip and Front Street. This is currently in the queue for study. I think what happened here with this one was because of when we received the request, I think it does take our folks some time before they could start the study, but when they were going to start that study, the Peck Slip project started. So when there is a construction project in the area, they're not able to do counts. So that one got held off, but now that the Peck Slip, the project is already completed, the park is open, they will be able to do the study for this one. Then for the next one that I have is the stop sign request for Beekman and Water Streets.
Could you be a little louder, Jen?
Sure, not a problem. For Beekman and Water Street, that's also a stop sign request. This was something that we received November 2019, and this was actually studied. it was actually denied due to low volumes and not meeting the federal warrants. There's actually 8 or 9 of them that it didn't meet. If there's any additional details that I can provide, I can certainly go back to my team and ask them, specifics about that study itself. But it was denied, and I think prior to this request, even in the past, I think this was already looked at, and it was also a denial. Usually, when we study these locations, it does take a lot before it does get approved. So that's what I have for the stop sign request. Then for bike lane projects, I would say that within the last 2 years, we have presented various projects in CB1, and it does take us some time, and there were a lot of delays. And especially with the pandemic, there was also a hold on many of these projects. So it wasn't until the spring that we actually were able to catch up on most of them and also continue to work on implementing them. A lot of them, I think it does take us to complete it before we are able to return to the board to provide an update, or, based on whatever requests that we receive from the resolutions about, I guess, to monitor the, how successful they are. It would take us some time before we'll be able to come back. Let me go through some of the ones that I have. I know for the Bowling Green Share Street, which is also in relationship to the Broadway Whitehall bike lane, not everything's completed yet. I think there's still some markings that hasn't been implemented yet, but I think that's something that's coming up. I will continue to work with my colleagues to find out when it's fully complete, because once it's complete, then we will be able to do our, monitoring for it. For the most recent, the Tribeca network. So Varick, Westboro, and Church, that's still ongoing. There's a lot of pieces that has to be implemented. Knowing there are also open restaurants in the area, that we have to work around that. For Murray Park Place and Barclay Street, I believe they told me that this is already completed, so they will start to monitor it. And I think sometime either later this year or early next year, they'll be able to come back with their report on how those streets are working. And the last one that I have on my list is safety upgrades for Canal Street. This was the transportation alternative study. So our team has received resolutions from CB1, 2, and 3. Between the 3 of them, 3 resolutions, and also the presentation itself, we are reviewing it and evaluating it internally. When we are ready, and we will come back to the board and be able to provide our proposal for this particular corridor. That's all I have for now.
Great.
What are the changes that they want to make on Canal Street, Jen?
What was that?
What are the changes that they're proposing on Canal Street?
Right now, the presentation that they shared with us included a lot of, I think a bike lane was something that they put into the presentation. But at the same time, they were also,
where the cars are going to the Holland Tunnel?
No, my recollection actually was they wanted a bike lane in the corridor, not directly on Canal Street, because they realized how busy it was. It focused more on pedestrian safety and delivery access to the curb.
Okay.
Because it was creating so many problems with congestion amongst the traffic.
I see Patrick's got his hand up. If you want to unmute yourself,
Yes,
Patrick.
and one question to Jen.
Go ahead.
If you can come up as a follow-up to the Canal Street, I understand they're not done yet, but if you have any comments to make as we get ready to do our district budget, that would be very helpful so that we can support some of the canal changes.
Okay.
Okay, Patrick, please.
Was invoked earlier. Do you have an update on the financial district pedestrian mobility study, the $500,000 that was set aside several years ago? You remember, I'm sure, Commissioner Trottenberg, then Commissioner Trottenberg kicked off in February 2020 an intra-agency meeting with a lot of other stakeholders. Looked like we were off and running, and then the pandemic hit. But I understand things were iced, but with everything reopening, is that going to restart? If so, when? And then the other question is around specifically the Nassau Street pilot idea, really from Anne to.
So I don't have a
Came
update
out
for
of
that one.
problem that had to be solved.
Okay. So going back to the FIDI mobility study, I have to actually check back with our team. I haven't heard any updates on that one.
Okay.
I don't know what's the status right now, but let me check with them and I'll get an update.
Okay, thank you.
And for the Nassau Street, I don't have a response for that one. I know that was something that we also received information on. I don't know. Same thing. I don't have updates for that one yet.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Patrick, I might be able to give you some enlightenment because I bugged in Pink Car about those two things. As far as the mobility study, that is still on pause, but has not been terminated. And he said to continue to put it on the district budget. They're going to get to it. Like I said, it hasn't been terminated as an idea, but it's not ongoing at this time. As far as the Nassau Street, we're hearing about that in the quality of life study, and they will be starting to do some road construction there around Pine Street. It's only for a couple of blocks. And he said otherwise they're not particularly looking at anything for that for shared street or anything of that sort.
I do see, Lucian, that you had your hand up. I think it's from the last one, but did you have something else you wanted to ask, Jen?
No, sir.
No.
I left it up.
All right, all good. Okay, so I do have a question, a quick question for Jen. You had mentioned the Tribeca World Trade Center Civic Center bike lane connection that you guys are working on, and a lot of the striping has gone in on Varick, West Broadway, and Church. I didn't see the paint, like the green on the paint going in, but I did notice with the striping that the restaurants that have been on the curb are staying in the curb, so the bike lane terminates where the restaurants are. What's the plan? I do understand that there's a plan to have a temporary go around restaurants. I was wondering if you could speak to that. Is that something? Is the DOT going to implement temporary barriers to continue bike lanes around existing open street seating, or is that the restaurant that's going to be responsible for maintaining that?
I believe it would be us assisting them on that. Right now, I don't have all the details for that, but I know one of my colleagues has been working with the restaurants on that, or with the team as well. I think that's the thing that we're trying to work on for that particular block on West Broadway.
Right,
And
that's where a lot of the restaurants are.
Yeah. As far as the green paint, that might be the last thing that's going to go in, because I think that's, I mean, I've been told that that's the holdup for us to complete this project entirely. And I don't know if, I don't know when it's going to be put in, but eventually it'll get put in.
Fantastic, thanks. And I see, Mitch, that you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, just Jen, should I never ask you about Trimble Place again?
That's the tough one. I don't even have a full response to get back to you on.
I know. It's not the thing. I could just. I'm sorry to bother you like about this. Just for facts, I look out my window right now, and like I said, nights and weekends, all those spaces are just being reserved for the state insurance building. They're totally empty, and like I said, this is how it's been for the last year or two when they put those like wrong signs up after the construction. So I just wanted to mention it again. I apologize for bothering you, but it's you know, they've stolen the street at night on weekends.
I understand that. It's something that I've been trying to get someone in senior management to take a look at. I just haven't gotten any response from them.
Sure. Thank you, Jen. I understand. Thank you.
All right.
Great, thanks, Jen. And
Thanks, Jen.
Mitch, you reminded me, I had one other just quick note for Jen. We had seen this post from a few neighbors on Nextdoor, and there had been a few 311 requests. This is at gosh, where is it? It's Dutch and John Street. I guess a sign had come down, and so there was a temporary sign that was kind of put up on the sidewalk, the pedestrian sidewalk, on this is Dutch Street. So I believe there was a 311 request that may have been forwarded to the office, but I just wanted to bring this up to Jen to see if you had heard anything yet about this. And
I
this
can
picture's from
certainly
a few
look
days
into
ago, so it may not be an issue at the moment. I didn't have a chance to walk by today.
Okay. I certainly can check with our borough engineers because it might be in the queue already, but it also may not be. So let me check. You said it's on
Okay.
Dutch?
Michael, can I just ask Jen about, how could they
Yes.
even putting that there? How could somebody in Betty's situation even pass by there? Like, how could that even be a thought, Jen?
I don't think it was meant to be placed like that. I think somehow it fell or somehow, I don't know, something happened there. Because
I wouldn't
that's not
be
something we
shocked.
do.
A lot of cars and delivery end up on the sidewalks here, so it wouldn't be the first time that a truck knocked down a sign, and this may have just been propped up by someone, but I just wanted to point it out.
Okay.
Yeah, great, and that's all I've got. So I don't think anyone, does anyone else have their hand up? I don't see anyone else with their hands up. So back to you, Betty.
Back to the slides. And thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
I wanted to get some feedback from people about something for July before I worked on it. I was thinking whenever we talk about loading zones, hope you realize the rules that are in the city charter from the DOT say that placards are allowed to park, and that's all kinds of placards, are allowed to park in loading zones. Since we all know that loading zones are very needed in all places, do you want me to start to put together a draft resolution to consider in July to ask for rule changes? And these are the same rules that we looked at for please don't park in front of curb cuts. It's exactly those same rules that say, by the way, city-owned vehicles, by the way, city-owned placards allow you to park in loading zones. So what is the feedback? And again, Michael, I can't see hands, so.
Good, I'll monitor, but also feel free. I think we're all being pretty respectful. So if you just want to take yourself off mute, feel free to go for it, guys.
Betty, obviously I can't see why anybody would be against that. I mean, I'm glad that you're proposing to change some of the rules or laws that are on the books, because sometimes you say that, well, these laws are already on the books. And I mean, I agree with you. This is a rule that shouldn't be there. And so I support what you just said 100%.
Okay, then anyone else? Because if there's a general agreement, then I will put together a resolution and we'll take it on in July.
I don't see anyone else at the moment, but I will say I also support this.
Okay, as long as there are no negatives. If there are any negatives, speak now, or I want to make sure those things are covered. Great, well then go on to the next and I'll work on the reso for placards. Oh, this was a very busy month for tweets from the DOT. And I've just started following Twitter because I guess like the president, some people make really all their announcements this way. So this is how I keep track of what the DOT is doing. So if you go on to the next, I'll show you some that are interesting. So for Mimi and Mitch and others who are interested in education, I want to let you know they are moving in that direction now. And you can see the NYPD, Transportation Bureau, is even following the DOT on this, but showing things like, don't run into pedestrians, stop, look, next one. Look out for people on motorcycles. You're sharing the road with motorcycles and scooters. So since they have clear, less obstructed views, but they're also much more vulnerable, please be predictable in your driving so that they can move around with some confidence. Next one. Everybody wants your space. If you're on a bike, give them 3 feet when you're passing them. Don't get too close. Next one. See, they went all out in May, can I say? Deputy Commissioner Santinez, here with driving isn't easy, but saving a life is. Turn slowly. Again, a huge percent of accidents of all sorts in New York City occur when somebody's turning. So whether it's pedestrians, car drivers, I mean, everyone, most of them get hurt on corners when somebody's turning. Next one. We had a tweet storm here. This was kind of interesting. In terms of Vision Zero, DCAS, which controls all the equipment and stuff in the city, they now are putting cameras to look at vehicle blind spots. Because again, that's where a lot of the injuries and accidents occur, as well as knocking down the street signs and doing other things. So that was kind of interesting. They're starting to move to have better vision to stop some of these problems. Another one, Deputy Commissioner announced, the Commissioner announced that New York City is getting another 159 million in state funding for local road repairs and maintenance, which is nice. So keep in mind as we move towards budgeting some of the things that need to be done. We certainly know about the cobblestones, but any problem areas that you have, think in mind. Hopefully this will help us. Next one. Interesting, a topic that may be interesting to learn more about, program called Delivering New York, which is a smart truck management plan for New York City. I've heard nothing about it, but it's a new freight management plan that's a major initiative to reduce truck congestion and expand curbside space for deliveries. So this will be interesting and very timely. If we ask the placards, don't take up all that space. Next. They're into partnerships again. In this case, DOT announced on the 13th that they're having a smart urban freight lab, which will be interesting to learn about what that is and what they're doing. They're looking at establishing off-street freight distributions and consolidation hubs. And they're partnering with private garages, which is another interesting thing. So, what are the strategies that we can expect to see in our district that are being done to get some of these big trucks off the road? Things like the Amazon that you saw on Warren Street, where they're using it as a distribution center. So that's kind of interesting. And then expanding the bridge and strike reduction program using signage and pavement. Again, I know nothing about it. It'll be interesting to learn, especially since they're interested in our neighborhood. Next. Yes, I want you to think about 2 district budgeting ideas for fiscal year 2023. Remember, we're starting fiscal year 2022 already. So we will soon be turning our eyes to fiscal year 2023. Expect Lucian to start asking you for that information. So put on your thinking hats, because that's going to be coming up. And next. Thank you. See you in July. And again, remind me if there's something you want done. We want to wrap up before the August is our summer break. So if you can think of anything, don't be shy. Let Lucian know, let Michael know, let me know. And thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Thanks, everybody.
Sure. Take care.
All right. With that, I believe that meeting is closed, right, Betty? You all closed?
Yes, it is.
All right. This recording is over.